This is Aloha Sunday, and on every Aloha Sunday in this spiritual community, we always speak to an ancient Hawaiian proverb. These proverbs were collected by Dr. Mary Kavenapukui in a book that is called Olelo Noeao, which means wisdom sayings. We've been doing this ever since I came here, and today we're looking at this phrase, E malama ika iki kanaka, ika nua kanaka, o kakou no keia ho akua. The first letter of this sentence is kind of a word that Hawaiians would say that's kind of like, pay attention, I'm talking. And it's one of those interesting carryovers from the Hawaiian language that's very common in Pidgin. In Pidgin, they start a lot of things with A. They say, hey, where are you going? Hey, you like eat? Hey, come here. Hey, I like you. It kind of just means, listen to me, I'm talking to you, pay attention. So A is that, then malama is a word that means to take care of or pay attention to something. Malama. In Hawaii, quite often when people are leaving one another as they've been together, they'll say malama pono, which means take good care of yourself. Take, be well. Malama pono. Ika iki means to the small. Of the small. Iki is a word that means small. Kanaka means man. Ika and then nua is a word that means, it kind of means like big, but not bigness so much in size, but in thickness maybe, but also like big and deep and almost in consciousness bigger than small and then bigger. So that's nua. And again, kanaka. So we have the iki kanaka, the small man, and we have the nua kanaka. O kakou, kakou means it's ours. Our, kakou, our. No kakou, no keia, indeed. Akua means God, and ho means like to create God, to be God, the godness. So Mary Kavena has thankfully given us the English translation, because I don't think you're going to figure it out from all that. And she says, basically, this means this. Take care of or pay attention to the insignificant and the great man. That is the duty of us gods. This actually appeared in a chant that Hi'iaka was giving to her sister Pele, who is the volcano goddess. They lived on the Big Island. Hi'iaka lived in the Lehua forest. She was also sometimes called Hi'iaka Ika Pole o Pele, was the one who was in the bosom of Pele. They were very, very dear friends. Pele, when she was traveling around as a spirit, went to Kauai one time and fell in love with a young, handsome chief named Lohiau. Very soap opera stuff, these Hawaiian chiefs and their things, if you want to know. And so she sent Hi'iaka to go fetch him for her. And as Hi'iaka was leaving, this is what she said. Take care of the small men and the insignificant and the big. That's the duty of us gods. So when I read that, it kind of jumped at me like it was very intriguing. And as I looked at it, there were lots of levels of meanings to that too. But the first catching place for us, for many of us, is when you look at that phrase, that's the duty of us gods. And right away we might say, well then good, it doesn't apply to me. That's not my job description. But actually it is. In the book of Matthew, Jesus is seen quoting an ancient scripture that is in the book of Psalms. And I'm going to give you the original in the book of Psalms, 86:2. It's God is speaking, and it says, I have said, ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High. Jesus quoted that and repeated it for people because he wanted them to know their worth. It's important for people to know their worth. Jesus said to them essentially, you are significant. Of course you are. Why else would there be a verse that says, for God so loved the world? God's not going to love the insignificant nothings. He's going to love us because we are significant. And I know that's a struggle for a lot of people sometimes. So I want to give you an opportunity to try to feel into that place. We teach that here because there's a piece of that divinity in all people, a piece of that godness. We were created in the image and the likeness of God, so there is a part of us there. And sometimes that part is hard to access, isn't it? I mean, you think, okay, good, there's a part of me that's God, but I don't know where it is, and I don't ever get to feel it, and I ask for it, and nothing ever speaks to me. Or sometimes we make a decision or we pray about something, and we get this kind of guidance, but then if you're like me, sometimes you're going, okay, a little suspicious. Is that God or is that me in disguise? Is that my ego in disguise? Or are you my mother-in-law? Are you my ex? Is that my ex talking? Who is that speaking behind that curtain? Because we're sometimes just really not so in touch with that divine place in us. Well, I want to do a little exercise with you to get you in touch with that for just a moment. In case you're having trouble even identifying that feeling at all. Can you do this with me? You're just going to do a little exercise. It's very simple. I'm going to ask you to close your eyes for just a minute. Now, I want you to think of a place that you go in your own mind where there's a feeling, and it's the feeling I want you to look at. I want you to look for that feeling and see if you can tap into that feeling. And the feeling I want you to look for is that feeling that is a desire in you to matter. A desire in you to make a difference in the world. Not so much to be important and famous, but it's a desire to be significant. It's a desire to live a life that actually means something. Do you know what I'm talking about? I don't want you to fixate on well, I had that desire, but I didn't achieve it. I don't want you to fixate on failure. I don't want you to fixate on what it's supposed to look like or what you might think it'll look like. I just want you to think about that feeling in you that wants to be relevant, to be significant, to make a difference. See if you can find that feeling. Don't argue with it. Okay, good. Come back. Were you mostly able to find that? You can just nod ahead if you can. Okay, well, what I want to suggest to you is that feeling, if you were able to tap into that, if you were able to feel that feeling, that's a God place in you. Because you see, that God place in you is the place that wants to be relevant and significant. Because that's what God is in the world, relevant and significant, makes a difference, changing things. And that piece of us, that's the desire in us that is yearning to go out and make a difference in the world. That is a very holy and special part of you. Now, a lot of times we get it all twisted up and we think it's a desire to be famous, or we think it's a desire to be rich, or we think it's a desire to do something else, have power and control over people. Those are just permutations, but the kernel of the desire is a God place. And so if you haven't felt a God place in you before, that's one. We all have that because we are all made in part of that Godness. That's important for us to do, to check in and feel that. Now, most people believe, spiritually speaking, that there are two parts of our kind of selves, and that we know people who think they have more than two parts themselves. That's okay too, but there are two major ones. There's this, what we're going to call, for the purpose of today, kind of the higher self. There's that God part of ourself, and then there's that other part that's kind of our regular part of ourselves. Sue Sicking is a great unity writer, and she describes it this way. She said, each one of us has what appears to be two selves: our everyday outer self with personality, and the one we were created to be, the self we are unfolding, bringing forth into manifestation with moment by moment living. Now, the distinction is the personality one seems to kind of automatically develop. We didn't have to think much about it. But this other one, this higher order one, this is the kanaka, the bigger, significant person within us. That's the one that looks like it's going to take some nurturing. In fact, this nurturing is part of what we sometimes call our spiritual journey. Ever from the moment we enter this life experience until the very moment we exit this life experience is what we sometimes call the journey. We are not the journey. In fact, we're not even our bodies. We're not our minds. We're spirit beings, and we're having this journey. And the purpose of this journey is to develop and unfold this greater, the kanaka, the big man. So it's not easy. The ability to discern the real from the illusion doesn't appear overnight. It is an attitude, a development in consciousness that must be cultivated and trained, which emerges in a gradual way. Now, this is a unity writer, and it just sounds so nice, doesn't it? How lovely. My consciousness is going to emerge through training in a very gradual, lovely way. I'm sorry. This is a good example of how sometimes unity makes pretty things that are not so pretty. Because a great deal of our unfolding is not very attractive. And it's not even very enjoyable in those moments when it happens. Think back the times in your life when you really grew, when you really gained this fantastic insight. It quite often comes from terrifically painful experiences. It quite often comes from terrible challenges, health challenges, or financial challenges, or relationship challenges. And then unity writers say, oh, it's cultivated and trained, which emerges in a gradual way. How lovely. That's like saying giving birth is like sneezing. Achoo! Oh, look, a baby. Yeah. You ladies, you can laugh at that. Guys are going, well, it doesn't happen like that? No, I don't understand. Yeah, that's kind of the way it is. So I appreciate that Rebecca Clark wrote about it in such a lovely way, but my personal experience is different. And I want you to know that's okay. A lot of times we beat ourselves up. Sometimes we think we're supposed to sneeze and have a baby, but it doesn't work that way. It's a long, painful process sometimes, and when we're in it, it's okay. We need to know that it's okay. I think that's why the Hawaiian phrase says to pay attention to and to take care of the small man and the big man. We don't want to beat ourselves up as we're going through this journey. It's okay to be doing this stuff because it's part and parcel of the unfolding, as pleasant or as unpleasant as it may be. This story, to me, it's epitomized, this process, in the story of the prodigal. And you've heard it a lot. I know this story completely because for 10 years I did workshops on this one little section of the Bible in 55 different churches in countries all the way from England to Acapulco, doing this workshop for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. So I know this story. Believe me, I know the story. If you're not familiar, it's this guy has 2 sons. The younger one says, Dad, give me my inheritance because I'm going to go out in the world. I want to be happy. And I'm not happy here. I'm going to go out there and find it. So he takes the money and he goes to Vegas, although they don't call it Vegas in the Bible. That he takes the money and he goes and he spends it. And the Bible is a little bit like this earlier writer said, well, he wasted his substance on riotous living, which is a nice way of saying sex, drugs, and rock and roll, which is what he did until he got broke. And then he did what lots of older children do when they're broke. He came home again. So, you see, nothing ever changes. This is a 2,000-year-old story. And I used to teach that story all the time. I taught it as part of our process. I taught it as the search for stuff out there. I taught it mostly as an exercise of absolute, complete forgiveness and reconciliation. And it is all those things and more. I now believe it's even more profound than all those things I was talking about. Profound and simpler. I believe this story is truly a very simple statement, and I know you're going to be weary of me saying this all the time, of the importance of our oneness with God. You see, when the prodigal child was home, the father represents the godness. When he was home, there was a unitive state. They were together. There was oneness. And then the son gets this bright idea. He listens to his other self saying, hey, I think you could have more fun out in Vegas. I think you could have more fun over there. I think you could have more fun with your friends doing this. So he says, give me the money, I'm going to go do it. And so he goes to find it. And he leaves, in his mind, he leaves that state of oneness. And he tries to find things out there. And this is what we do. This is what we're trained to do. We're trying to find our significance. We're trying to become important by out there-ness somehow. Well, it doesn't work. And he ends up feeding pigs. Now, this was really serious for a little Jewish boy because they're not even supposed to touch footballs. And here he is. He's feeding pigs. This is the lowest point in life he could possibly be. And a couple of things happen in that story that is different from some things maybe you and I do. The first thing is he's stuck there. It says in the scripture very clearly, he comes to himself. Oh, wow. That comes to himself. There is a bigger self that starts to speak to him. and says, what are you doing here? You're in your father's house, the servants are living better than this. Why don't you just go home? Now, you and I may have had that conversation about a lot of things, but there's a couple of things that he did are different than what we have done sometimes, what I have done. You may have been like me when I was in that place thinking, well, this is my place. I might as well see if I can find a trailer and, set up house here, maybe get a dog. Maybe I could be manager here at the hog farm someday. We sort of get into a mindset that this is what I deserve, this is all I can have. This is what life has given me, and I'm gonna just stay here. You've been in that place? Well, that's a place we sometimes can get. But that's not where he was. He was there, but then the voice said, no, that's different. So he realized, he says, yeah, you're right. It's better back there. It was better when I was in that one state with God. That was better. That was fantastic. Now, a lot of us have been in that place. Yeah? Oh, yeah, I'm not staying here. No, I know it. I know what I need to do. You bet. And I'm going to take a class, and I'm going to do it. I think I'm going to try and lose 20 pounds first before I go home so I look a little better. And I think maybe I'll save up and get a better car before I drive back so that, I can come back in style. I'm not quite ready yet, but I know that's what I need to do. So I'm going to do it. One of these days, I'm going to do it. I mean, that goes on. If you're like me, I spent 20 years in that spot. 20 years in that little place. We stay there for all kinds of things, all kinds of reasons. Some people will stay in that place going, yeah, I know I need to quit drinking, and I will someday. And we'll be there because we know there's a better way, but we don't. He didn't do that. He said, yeah, look, it's better there. Then there's this amazing scripture in the Bible. It's so powerful. He arose and he went. I could do a whole sermon on that. Let's just get up and go. It's the Nike thing. He said, yeah, you're right. I'm going. And he turned around and he started off. That's pretty amazing. Because before he even got home, he got met by his father, and there was this total reconciliation. There was no forgiveness given because there was no forgiveness needed, and love just bloomed. That's the way oneness works. But it's our decision. There is power in our moment of decision. The Bhagavad Gita says it like this: if you let go of attachments of external things, you will delight in the bliss of the true self. Persistent meditation on the infinite God brings a state of uninterrupted joy. There is no joy here in this place or that place or that place. There is only joy in one place, and that is in that unitive state with God in our minds. And that is our choice. The Course in Miracles says, choose once again what you would have yourself to be, remembering that every choice you make establishes your own identity as you will see it and as you believe it is. So it's up to us. See, the prodigal child didn't change any of those circumstances. He just changed the way he saw himself. Instead of away from home, being home. Made all the difference in the world. Now, how does that happen? We have to start questioning ourselves. Which of ourselves are we nurturing? Are we nurturing the small self? And the way we nurture it is a lot by the things we say. If we have a small self, we may nurture those small things. Think about it in your conversations with people. How do we lead off in those conversations with people? How do we introduce? Hi, my name is Sky, and I have asthma. Hope you're not wearing any cologne. Okay? Now, see, if I start off like that, I am nurturing my small self. Because I have reinforced some perceived sense of illness, and I've labeled it, and I've extolled it, and that's what we're going to talk about. I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to lead with that. I don't want to lead with my woundedness. I don't want to lead with my past pathology. I want to lead with my bigger self, the kanaka uku. Do you understand? And we do this with the things we say. We do it in every little moments that you can't even imagine that can make a difference. There's a story told about two young boys that are walking along by a field. And there's a farmer, a very poor, kind of skinny, older man, who's plowing a field, working really hard. the farmer has taken off his good clothes and he put them in a neat little pile right there on the edge of the field so they'd be clean. And he put on his work clothes and he's plowing. These two little boys, and the young boy says, hey, let's take his shoes and we'll go hide him. Then we can watch and look at the look on his face when he sees his shoes gone. And the older boy says, I have a better idea. Let's take a silver dollar and we'll put one in each of his shoes. And then we'll hide and we'll look at the expression on his face. And the little boy said, okay, that'll work. So they did. They put a silver dollar in the shoe. And after a while, the older man was finished with his day's work and he went over to put on his clothes and he put his foot into that shoe and he could feel something in there. And he reached in there and he pulled out a silver dollar. And he looked all around and he couldn't imagine. He didn't see anyone. He couldn't imagine where it had come from. It was completely confounded. And then he reached down and put on his other shoe and oh my gosh, there was another silver dollar. And the little boys are just watching. And then the old man did something quite remarkable. He dropped down to his knees and he started to pray. And he started to be thankful to God for these silver dollars that just appeared in his shoes because he'd been struggling to just find enough money to feed his family. He went away from that field changed with a greater faith than he had before. But he wasn't the only one changed. Those two little boys that were watching him, they were changed forever too, because they did something from their bigger self. And when they did something from their bigger self, they made an impact in the world. They became significant in an important and a powerful way. It's a moment by moment choice every time we interact with people on how we are going to live as a small man or a big man. So here's what I encourage you to do: to know that it's moment by moment, to pay attention as we interact with people, whether we're interacting from our larger self, that God self, or we're interacting from our other self. And then this next one is the really important one that I want you to really work on, and that is to speak into those decisions. If I'm going to decide to act in my bigger self, I have to speak into it. Long before there were 12-step programs, long before there was rehab and Betty Ford, we had Benjamin Franklin. And in those days, they used to have a serious drinking problem. And Benjamin Franklin had a remedy for drinking. And he published it in his little magazine that he used to publish that was very wise. It was kind of brilliant, actually. You know what he said people to do? He said, if you want to stop drinking, go around and tell everyone in the village that you're going to quit drinking. So you go around and say, okay, I'm going to quit drinking. I'm quitting drinking, okay? I'm telling everyone, go door to door. I'm quitting drinking, I'm quitting drinking, I'm quitting drinking. Now, you're going to have a variety of, responses. You may have some like, well, it's about time. Or you may have, oh, thank God. Or we'll see. I think it did several things. What it did is when you do that you get everybody collectively knowing that it's going to happen. First of all, you get a collective energy of consciousness. People going, okay, you're quitting drinking. Far out. We're going to hold you to it. We're going to watch. We're going to make sure. So you built in a support system long before we even knew what that was. Then if you did start drinking, well, you had to leave town, probably, go to another town and start over again, which geographically was difficult. But if you did, there would be people that say, hey, I thought you were going to quit drinking. I thought you were going to quit. Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. So you got people to call on. So it was a powerful thing. We can do that with each other as a spiritual community, but only if we speak into the bigger self that we want. This is the thing I'm going to encourage you to do this week, is to look at how you're going to speak into the bigness. How are we going to speak into the solutions? How are we going to speak into what is working in our life? How are we going to speak to the presence of God in our life instead of all the things that we think are missing, are lacking, or are wrong with the world? That's the small man. And then the last one is know that as we do it, the actions will follow, because that's just the way it works in metaphysics. So here's your affirmation for the day. I commit to speaking words that expand my higher self. That's what I want you to do this week. Only this one thing. I want you to commit to speaking words that are going to expand that part of your being. Okay? Can you join me? Let's say this together. I commit to speaking words that will expand my higher self. Beautiful. You do that. Those words are powerful, and you will find that higher self growing on this amazing journey of life. I'm going to invite you to close your eyes with me for a moment. Take a deep breath. Know that there's so much to this that you and God can work out. That it's really about being in touch with that presence within you that's going to show you what to say and when to say it. I can't give everyone the words. That's part of that relationship that you have with the God of your being. But in this moment, just commit to that, saying, I want to speak words that are going to grow your presence in me, God. Not anything else. Only your presence in me. Make that, if you can, as we come to God together in the sacred and holy silence.